Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming today. I'm Michelle Muhammed, the founder and managing partner of M&M Wealth Advisory. Today's objective is simple. We're working to empower you with knowledge and action steps to build your foundation for wealth. Our purpose is to help more and more people experience well-being through wealth. And money continues to be the number one source of stress worldwide for men and women. This workshop aims to give you the tools and the knowledge to feel empowered to take action. We're going to help you examine your relationship with money today. Think about your financial goals and strive to empower you to achieve wealth and well-being. So, today's agenda, we're going to look at some data about women broadly, where we are today, and investing habits unique to us. We'll have a conversation about wealth and what it means and what investing means. We'll discuss a few investing considerations and behavioral aspects to keep in mind. And then we'll dive into the actionable items that you can take away, which we hope also leads you towards a greater sense of well-being. This is just a little bit of information about M&M Wealth Advisory. As you can see, we really focus on financial guidance for every stage of life. And that encompasses so many things, including holistic wealth and retirement planning, tax-efficient investment management, transition planning. So many parts of life are transitions, whether it's career changes or job changes, whether it's losing a spouse or going through a divorce, or happy things like retirement, having a new addition to the family, or an inheritance or windfall of some sort. That goes into legacy and estate coordination. We work as part of your team with your estate planning attorney to help you with that type of thing, as well as, most importantly, fee-based fiduciary advice. So everything is under that umbrella of fiduciary fee-based advice. And what that essentially means is we have to tell you what's in your best interest, not ours. And our team is comprised of myself, Nancy Brzezowski, who is our client relationship manager, as well as support from Stratos Wealth Partners and Stratos Investment Management in a variety of areas, from portfolio management to compliance and IT support, especially when it comes to keeping information secure. So let's talk about women in the world today. Women's power is growing. As you can see from the slide, over 67% of recent degree earners are women. We were over 49% of athletes at the 2024 Olympics. And the 118th US Congress was about 29% women. Right now, some things are changing. Women are starting businesses at 2 times the rate of men. 10.4% of leadership positions at Fortune 500 companies are female. And you can see, as I talked to you before about women starting business, women-owned businesses in the US, there are 14 million of them. So not only are the statistics starting to move, but also our assets are growing. So we're controlling more wealth than ever before. And we are the breadwinners or co-breadwinners in the majority of homes. You may have heard that we're set to inherit the majority of 47 trillion in intergenerational wealth in the US. and projected to control over 50% of global personal investable wealth by 2030. But there's still a number of challenges. We still earn 82 cents per dollar a man earns. 43% of working women are burned out. And 45% of women say money negatively impacts their mental health. So what do we want? What do women want? There's a movie by that title, right? Anyway, we want to be financially secure. We want to be debt-free. We want to feel confident about money and be knowledgeable about investing. And possibly most importantly, invest to fulfill goals. So let's start asking ourselves, what does wealth mean to each and every one of us? I'm asking you, what does wealth mean to you? Wealth means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. For some, it means a state, of being able to have choices. For others, wealth brings to mind images of travel, security, independence, or health. What does it mean to you? So ask yourself these questions. How do you want to save, spend, and share your wealth? When we talk about saving, usually there's a goal in mind like retirement for ourselves or college for our children or grandchildren or some other loved one. How do you want to spend your money? Things like travel, interests, and how do you want to share your money? Some people are very focused on sharing their money with family, with charities. In other words, a different and possibly longer lasting legacy with that money. When we talk about goals, some of you may have heard about SMART goals. Okay? You want to set goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. In other words, you want to be able to hold yourself accountable. If you just say something wishy-washy, like I'd like to retire sometime before I'm 80, that's not exactly a SMART goal. We would say specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, and it makes it more likely that you can put in place actions to reach your goals. So many headlines. Oh my gosh. And guess what? When we're investing, we have to look beyond the headlines. We're constantly surrounded by breaking news and attention-grabbing headlines. There are news junkies, or that term is there for a reason. Often these headlines feed into the fears and uncertainties of investors because that's what pulls people in to read or watch. But when it comes to investing for our goals, it's important to try to separate our emotions from our decision making, as hard as that might be. As we work through the second half of our agenda, we're going to aim to empower you to stop letting the noise distract you from your goals. Your worst enemy often turns out to be the noise around you. Know what counts and what you can control. Get organized, get invested, and create your financial strategy around your life considerations. So it's hard to have a conversation about investments without talking about risk. Often risk in the investing realm refers to the chance of losing money. At the same time, investments make money because you take on a certain amount of risk. It's often the case that higher risk, higher return, lower risk, lower return, within reason. There are some things that are high risk and a very big loss. But we'll talk about some ways to manage risk a little bit later. So you need to work with your advisor to find the right level of risk for your investments, which balances your risk tolerance with the risk required to meet your goals. Your risk tolerance is often expressed as a risk profile such as conservative, moderate, or aggressive. Your risk profile usually takes two key items into account. What is the primary goal of your investable assets? So examples, if your goal is to preserve value, that essentially means you're just looking to minimize the risk of losing value. If it's about emphasizing current income, then you want your investments to be relatively safe. If it's generating current income, but you'd like to build, value over time gradually, then you might be willing to take a little risk or some moderate risk even, so that they're growing, but you're also taking some out. So you're not going to go wild and crazy with the risk. How much volatility are you comfortable with? That's the second big question. And this is so important. I can tell you as a financial professional, excuse me, recovering from a cold, as a financial professional of over 25 years, that I've seen people want to take a certain level of risk, and then as soon as the market gets jittery, they pull back and get conservative, lock in a loss. Because remember, what's the old adage? Buy low, sell high. You don't want to buy high and sell low. But so many people do that when they panic. And I will tell you, I have seen some conviction that I never thought I would see, some passion around, well, this time it's different. And I can tell you that in my 25-year experience, and if we look further back to the beginning of the stock market, history and statistics tell us that typically history may not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And so really you want to be knowledgeable about yourself and share with your advisor what is it that you can tolerate in good times and bad times. Because the only thing we know for sure is that the stock market goes up and down. History says it goes more up than down, but there are times where it goes way down. I've seen some of those times, like 2008, 2011, 2020 for a short period of time, 2022, almost everything was down. So again, you need to understand yourself and share that information with me if I'm your advisor or the person who's helping you through this. So, although it's uncomfortable at times, taking some investment risk is often necessary in order to reach your financial goals. And if you sit on the sidelines or try to time the market by getting in or out at the right times, you risk not meeting them. Don't sit on the sidelines. I, again, have been through 2008. I've seen people get out and then sit on the sidelines because they're like, there's going to be a double dip recession. And we hit a low point in that period in March of 2009. And guess what? There are people who still were like, okay, it's starting to go up now. I think it's going to go back down. And just sat on the sidelines and sat on the sidelines. Some of them got back in right before the next downturn. But the point I'm making is not that they're not smart. Some of these people were really smart, but that they let their emotions dictate their actions, and their feelings dictated what they thought would happen. And very often, your feelings are not a good predictor of whether the market's going to go up or down. Who's in the White House is not a predictor of whether the market's going to go up or down. So if you're saving for the long term, particularly for something like retirement, don't wait for the right time to invest. The right time is now. Inflation alone can significantly impact your money. $100,000 in 2004 would be worth about $60,269 today if you were not invested. So you're just losing to inflation if you don't do anything. And I will tell you, if you feel like the bank is a safe place, I'm not saying it isn't, but I'll tell you, you're losing to inflation in most cases. I've seen many people with hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in bank accounts earning 0.01%. So, when should you start investing? Stick to this rule of thumb. The longer your money is invested, the better. Compound interest makes time your friend. It's the eighth wonder of the world, in my opinion. The more time you invest for, the more your investment can build on itself. So in this hypothetical example, where your money grows 10% each year, the difference between investing for 10 years versus 5 years is tremendous. If you're investing for the long term, don't wait to invest at the right time. You lose two ways when you wait: through the erosion of your purchasing power, i.e. through inflation, and missing out on that compounding interest. And I will tell you that ultimately, your goals are the most important. What I often see, though, is that folks anchor to, I'm saving for retirement, and they get to retirement, and we're not just saving till that moment. We then want the money to continue to grow to some extent so that if you live into your 90s or beyond, you are fine. And obviously, every case is different. For myself, I talk to clients about family history and their health, etc., without going into places that they're not comfortable, just to get a sense of what are we talking about. If you have multiple women in your family who've lived to 100, then we should probably, keep you invested a little bit more than someone whose family history, including their current health situation, indicates that they might be living a shorter lifespan. But again, my goal is not to have someone outlive their money. So I'm realistic and talk to you about what kind of risk, what kind of return, and so on that you're targeting and you're comfortable with in line with your goals and your objectives. Here's another way to look at the impact of worry on your money. And you're talking about the chief worrywart here. But I will tell you, I do not actually worry about the stock market and my investments as long as I am managing the risk appropriately, which in my opinion, I am. So if you let worry drive how you make decisions on your money, then you're acting often out of fear. And when we're fearful, we tend to move into less risky assets like cash. Have you ever heard the expression cash is king? It's usually very popular when the market's going down. When we do that, we take on the opportunity cost of missing top performing rally days. So missing just 5 of the best performing days over the last 20 years out of 7,300 days would be a 0.068% number of days, okay? And less than a 10th of a percent. Think about that. 7,300 days total, right? And missing just those 5 days could have cost your portfolio almost $300,000. And if you were unfortunate enough to miss the 25 worst days, you'd be close to flat on your investment. A reality to consider is that 24 of the 25 best days, I think I've got this wrong. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I think it's the 25 best days. Okay, so let's do that again. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. I don't even know how I put that in there. Here's another way to look at the impact of worry on your money. When we get fearful, we tend to move to less risky assets like cash or CDs or things of that nature. But when we do that, we take on the opportunity cost of missing top performing rally days. What's a rally day? After a negative day or a negative period, a rally. Something like what we saw with Brexit. I personally have the story of being on a cruise ship with my husband. We were doing a little, couples travel thing. And we landed in Europe and Brexit had happened. The market plummeted. And then the market rallied shortly thereafter. I think it was in the next day or two. I had a couple who had both rolled their retirement accounts to me, and one person's check got there on the day where the market plummeted, and the other person's check got there after the rally. So guess what? Buy low, sell high. Well, one bought at a lower point than the other. But if they had not and said, oh my gosh, the market's going down, let's just leave this in cash or something like that, they would have missed that rally. Anyway, so what this slide is talking about, though, is that just missing the 5 best performing days over the last 20 years, ending in 2024, which is out 5 days out of 7,300 days. That's 0.068%, less than 0.1% of the days. Just missing 5 days could have cost your portfolio almost $300,000. And then if you were unfortunate enough to miss 25 of the best days, which sounds like a lot, but again, it's a relatively small amount compared to 7,300 days. And also very likely, because as I told you, I have personally seen people get out of the market for periods of time and then regret it, sometimes months at a time. But anyway, going back to the point, if you were to miss those 25 days, then you can see that you would have had almost $600,000 less, more than $500,000 less. All right, the difference between $717,000 and $159,000. That's huge. So overact to any one bad day or a few bad days, and you could miss out. And don't let worry drive your investment decisions. Take it from a worrywart. Okay? Oftentimes, staying invested is the best strategy. So, you want to build your foundation for wealth and well-being. Each of you has a different story. Your wants and needs are deeply personal. That said, there are a few distinct commonalities that women share that make our life's journey unique from those of men's. Women tend to see money as a means to an end and use money to achieve personal goals, fulfill commitments, or for an issue we care about. Certain challenges and choices we make over our lifetime, like career, family, caregiving, health, relationships, those things impact finances. Be aware and keep your advisor updated. While everyone's path is unique, there are some fundamental topics to consider when it comes to building your foundation for wealth. Women who prioritize growing wealth understand that investing helps them reach their goals, big or small. And it's important to make your financial strategy your priority. So when you need it, it's there for you to help you with the nicer things that you're thinking about, your family, your personal goals and objectives. So, step one is get organized. This is hard, for myself included. Paper is the bane of my existence. But getting organized really allows you to see your situation. And that's particularly important in major life events or major life transitions, whether it be divorce, marriage, retirement. You need to know where you are. So you should know where your investment statements are, your bank accounts, your retirement accounts, your insurance policies, recent tax returns, estate and trust documents. I myself have actually found that saving these documents and having them backed up, whether on the cloud or the computer, etc., is really helpful to me, because if I have to go through and find something in stacks and stacks of paper, that doesn't do well for me. That being said, there are people. I remember in my early days working with employees of school systems and nonprofits, lots of teachers with those binders, and that's okay. If they know where to find the information, that's great. Okay, so I'd say, it's really important to know what your situation is, and that starts with just getting organized. If it's not you, let's say it's a family member, a parent, or someone else who you're caring for, get involved. For example, if your spouse is the one who typically takes the lead on the finances, talk to them about the finances, understand where things are and how the money's being managed. Talk to your parents about their financial situation and long-term plans, like retirement or what they would do or what they want you to do if they become incapacitated. Teach others if you're the responsible party. So for example, if you are the CFO in your family, God forbid something happens to you, you want to make sure that others know where things are, what things are in place, etc. And an easy way is to start with a filing system that works for you. I shared mine. I have lots of little folders and so on saved on OneDrive. And guess what? That has been really helpful to me in doctor's offices. It's been helpful to me in situations where I just didn't expect that I would need something, but I was able to find it in a secure way that worked for me. Other people like paper. But again, as long as you can put your hands on it and it's in a fire safe or something like that. Okay. You can see in the graphic, we've got file folders and tabs, whatever works for you. The next thing you want to do is define your goals. So some goals are short-term. Maybe you have a goal of paying off credit card debt, or you want to take your mom on a trip. Then there are medium-term goals. And examples could be that maybe you want to refinance your mortgage in the next few years. You may have wants like investing in a 529 plan for a grandchild. Then you have the long-term goals. So if you're several years away from retirement and I need to save $1 million for retirement, or I need to save another million for retirement. Or you maybe want to buy a second home in Cape Cod or Martha's Vineyard or wherever is important to you. Actually, one thing I would point out that I didn't just now is that you do want to understand the difference between a need and a want. I myself have had moments where my want has felt like a need, but I will say a very frank conversation with my spouse usually, helps us to get to what's a need versus a want. And he has the same thing. I mean, there are moments where we really need that, or do you just really, really want it? So that's something important to know. All right. Step 3 is knowing your numbers. I can't tell you how important that is in so many different situations. So you want to know what you own. You want to know what you owe. So assets and liabilities. That helps with your net worth. Okay? You want to understand what's coming in, your income, what's going out, your expenses. It is not uncommon for people to sit down with me, people who've saved lots of money, and really not know what their expenses are. Sometimes we have to back into the numbers. Now, that may sound crazy, but if you're spending less than you make, you often don't really categorize. I myself have gone through the exercise of saying, how is our money being spent? And can we make changes? Because perhaps we can do more fun stuff, or maybe different fun stuff, or save or give to causes that are more important to us. Step 4 is getting invested in a portfolio. For several of you who are attending today, you're already invested in a portfolio. We've worked on this together. But for some of you, you haven't. Maybe because of fear, maybe because of not knowing what to invest in, etc. So know yourself, know your goals, and know your needs. Ask for help. Know your options, start now, and stay invested. The next thing you want to do is plan your unique path. Everyone has a unique life journey, even twins. However, there's some commonalities women share that we've already discussed. Okay, how we view money, challenges and choices we make. Another important consideration is the fact that women are living longer. Living longer has become a women's issue. Longevity is a women's issue. Women live 5 years longer on average than men. Living longer often means that we've got to save more, right? I mentioned before that I talk to people about their family history of longevity. It's not just to be nosy. I can be a little nosy. It's not just that. It's really to understand the situation. All right. There are people who have family who died early and they live a long time, but certainly your chances of living a longer time are much greater if you already have longevity in your family. And so when you think about women in general outliving their male spouses and partners, that means that women need to give even greater attention and planning, greater attention to the planning when they're considering how to maximize benefits, like Social Security, even managing expenses over an extended period of time. Caregiving. Both parenting and caregiving affect women in our lifetimes disproportionately. We need to invest in our health. We need to think about Social Security and whether, how we can really make the right choices for our situation. Medicare, divorce or loss, and then also estate planning, planning for incapacitation death, etc. So parenting and caregiving. For many of you, I don't need to talk about this because you have lived it, okay? But here are some statistics that may be interesting to you. 86% of women have kids. That was actually surprising to me in doing the research leading up to this, but that's the case. And most women have 2.4 kids on average. I have 2 children. Kids are expensive. They're very lovable, but very expensive. Anyway, then we think about caregiving. The average is $70,800 per year on assisted living. And if you're looking at spending on a private room in a nursing home, that's $127,750. Now, every state is different. I have clients all across the United States, and so there are average numbers that vary from one state to the next, but these are national averages. And these are sobering numbers. So the average American spent $14,570 on healthcare in 2022. An average retired couple, age 65 in 2022, may need approximately $315,000 saved after tax to cover health care expenses in retirement. So one, due to longer lifespans, the amount a woman would need is likely more than half of that amount. And this should be considered in your financial strategy. Social Security. So Social Security is something that we could have a whole webinar on. So I'm going to just touch the highlights, okay? Essentially, there are 3 types of benefits. Individual, which is based on your working record and your primary insurance amount at your full retirement age. Lots of acronyms on here. Then the next type is spousal, which means you can get up to 50% of your spouse's primary PIA at your full retirement age. And I want you to be aware, and this will come up later when we're talking about divorce and things of that nature, that does not reduce your spouse's amount that they would get. But if you didn't have enough working years on your own, you could claim up to 50% of your spouse's as a spousal benefit. You would only want to do that if either your benefit, because you were out of the workforce or other reasons, was lower than 50% of his or hers. But it's something to keep in mind. And then survivor. Up to 100% of your late spouse or ex-spouses, you can end up getting that in Social Security benefits. So this is something I talk to a lot of couples about when they're making a decision, because sometimes it's wise for one person to claim at 70 and the other not to. Okay, 70 is the age where that's the latest you can do. So I've jumped over into the milestone ages, jumped ahead of myself there. The earliest that you can take Social Security is 62. Then there's full retirement age, and then there's 70. That's the latest. The key thing to know is that if you take it early, you are going to be subject to a permanent reduction and a penalty. Okay, so that's important to just be aware of, that permanent reduction and possibly a penalty if you continue to work before your full retirement age. Once you hit full retirement age, it's exactly like what it sounds like. You're going to get the full amount. There's no penalty, anything like that. However, if you continue to delay taking it, you can have the highest amount, which would be 70. Social Security is a hot topic. It's one of the things I get calls on a regular basis. And so I would say to you that it's very much a conversation that you want to have, whether it's with, me, or if you're not a client, your advisor, you want to have a very customized conversation about it to see what's right for you. Let's talk about those benefits for spouses. To get and qualify for spousal benefits, you need to be married at least 1 year. Your spouse must be collecting, and your benefit must be less than half your spouse's benefit at full retirement age. For survivor benefits, you must have been married at least 9 months. There are a couple exceptions, but we'll talk about that another time. It's very unusual. You need to be unmarried or married or remarried after age 60 when collecting. And then the benefit generally equals the amount the deceased spouse was collecting. Divorced spouses can also collect these benefits. So as you can see here, for it to be spousal and be divorced, both spouses need to be at least 62, both ex-spouses, we should say. You must have been married for at least 10 years. And the survivor needs to be unmarried or remarried after age 60. Again, this is a topic we could talk about for hours. Let's hit the high points on another huge topic, Medicare. So Medicare has so many different parts, so we're just touching the highlights. Part A is hospital insurance. Part B would be the equivalent of medical insurance. And together they make what we call original Medicare. Okay? Well, then there's Part D, which is the prescription drug coverage. And that's an add-on to original Medicare. You've probably heard about Medigap insurance. That's Medicare supplemental insurance. And essentially, that really is helpful to you because it's a private company plan that helps pay your share of the cost for original Medicare. But wait, there's more. Another option is Part C, or Medicare Advantage. It's an alternative to original Medicare. Essentially, this is another option that's private company driven, and private companies have bundled plans that include Part A, B, and usually Part D, that prescription drug coverage. So typically, only doctors in the plan's network can be used. And there are different out-of-pocket costs than original Medicare. And even different costs than supplemental plans like Medigap. It's a completely different animal. There's a possible additional premium. It can be less expensive than Medicare with Medigap and so on. However, you also are going to be subject to that insurance company telling you whether approving or rejecting or denying your claims. And that can be less beneficial. At the same time, though, you want to just be aware that, there are also things that are not always the best with original Medicare. So it's something that needs to be discussed. And for those of you who I work with, I have some resources that are really helpful in terms of getting objective advice based on your situation. Enrollment periods for Part B start at age 64 and 9 months and go all the way to age 65 and 3 months. So it's a 7-month period. And in general, that's if you're looking at the general enrollment period, not your initial, it would be January 1st to March 31st of each year. But surcharges may apply if you didn't apply when you were supposed to. There are special enrollment periods, and that can happen anytime you're covered by a current employer's plan or within 8 months of separation. So again, there are some exceptions to being required to start to enroll in Medicare, and again, we could talk about that for hours. So, divorce or widowhood? Truly, these are realities. And I can tell you, after 25 years of working with couples, I've seen some women who have experienced both of these. They've divorced, remarried, and been widowed. And so it's important to understand the landscape when it comes to that. When it comes to divorce, female breadwinners are only 16% of couples. However, they're 40% of divorces. And gray divorce can cut a woman's lifestyle by about 45%. So divorce is a woman's issue. So is widowhood. In my time, I have worked with widowers, but I've worked with far more widows for the reasons that we've talked about in terms of longevity. The average age of a widow is a mere 59. Some people, many people, are not even retired at that point. Many women, therefore, face this transition several years before retirement, and it can change the outlook for their retirement. So it's very, very important to plan ahead, not in a morbid way, but in a way where you get yourself empowered and informed. So whether your marriage lasts till the end of your life, or you suffer the loss of your spouse before the end of your life, it's important to essentially make sure that you know your numbers. I am constantly shocked by how many women in particular don't know their numbers because they delegate to their typically their male spouse or partner. And there's no reason for that. Even if that person is the family CFO, if you will, it's still important. You're a board member. You're the COO, most likely. It's important to have meetings where you are aware of what you have, where it is, who to come to when something happens. Those are all really important things. Estate planning. You guys are like, Michelle, you're such a Debbie Downer. No, this is about, again, informing yourself and making plans and making decisions that you can make, controlling what you can control. So some key documents to ensure that you have in place include power of attorney, which allows for someone to act on your behalf if you become incapacitated and unable to make decisions for yourself. I personally have seen this happen with a family member who declined extremely quickly. Fortunately, it was a happy ending to the story, but in the midst of that decline, we were all very happy that the power of attorney was in place, because the attorney, in fact, the person who was designated to have that power of attorney, was able to take our family member to the hospital, which turned out to be something that saved his life. In addition to which, he had a house sale going on at that point in time. And so somebody who was competent and capable at that point in time needed to be able to make a decision, and that was the power of attorney. Again, everything turned out well. There was a full recovery physically, cognitively, and so on. But it was a crucial time, and a time where multiple things of a financial and housing nature could have gone wrong if there had not been that document in place. It's also important to have an advance directive or medical power of attorney. Medical power of attorney, I should clarify in the example I just gave you, the family member who was the power of attorney was both a medical power of attorney and a financial power of attorney. So it's important that you have someone who can make decisions on one or both. And sometimes it's not the same person. We all know family members who are great with money and, executive decisions, like a decision needs to be made, but fall apart when a medical decision needs to be made. They're like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Well, maybe it needs to be two different people for different things. And sometimes you have more than one person, but that can get challenging if they don't agree. These are all things to talk with an estate planning attorney about, and your financial planner. These are the kinds of conversations we have just in general. I do not give legal advice, and no financial planners should unless they are a JD or a Squire, etc. But it's part of financial planning. And so it needs to be spoken about. And often I'm in meetings with folks and their estate planning attorney and even their CPA. And then a will, which helps dictate who gets what for accounts, et cetera, that do not have a beneficiary designation. You also want to make sure that, you're updating your beneficiaries and things of that nature, reviewing them periodically, especially at major life events like the death of someone in the family, and also divorce or the expansion of the family, new births, new life, or changes in relationships. Sometimes the person you thought you would be comfortable making decisions for you is going through something themselves, or maybe you just don't have the same type of relationship as you had before. So, what are the things that you can take away from this? What are the next steps? Talk to your financial professional. If you don't have one, find one who you feel comfortable with and talk to them about your situation. Assemble your team of professionals. So obviously that includes a financial professional to help you develop a financial plan and strategy. It could include insurance specialists on a wide variety of things, whether it's long-term care insurance, life insurance, if someone would suffer financially if you were to pass away, disability insurance if you're still working and your income is one of your greatest assets for so many people. An attorney. You should have an estate plan in place. And doing it yourself can be dangerous and not the best thing. So an estate planning attorney. There are other things on here that may be optional. Maybe you do need a life coach. Maybe you do need an appraiser because of some life event like selling a house or going through a divorce, etc. A business valuation expert. There are people on here who may be important at different points in time or may never be important to you. If you don't have a business, it's never going to be important. Your accountant, though, CPAs, like I said, in addition to estate planning attorneys, I do meetings all the time with folks and their CPAs because, again, we are the team. And often your financial planner is the quarterback of that team. I'm not a sports person, so I just am using that expression. And then, like I said, not all of these are important for you and for every single person. So take action. Hope is not a strategy. Learning a bunch of information and doing nothing with it is not helpful to you or anybody else. Implementation is key. What did we talk about? Get organized. If you need professional help to get organized, whether it's in your home or in your financial life, identify who can do that, who can help you with that. Define your goals. This is very personal. And People like myself will ask you, what are your goals? The estate planning attorney will ask you, what's your goal? Know your numbers. There is nothing wrong with knowing your numbers. Like I said, whether you are going to be married and both, pass away in your sleep after a great meal and a wonderful trip together or not, you still need to know your numbers and you still need to get invested and have a plan for your unique path. These are all important things. I've never heard of anyone regretting knowing their situation and having a plan for themselves and the people and causes they care about. So now we're going to focus on what I consider to be the fun part of things, which is questions and an open discussion. And what financial actions, for example, are you going to take today? That would be a question that I would ask you. And what is something you learned today? All right. But what are your questions? So let's take a few. Let's see what we have here in the chat. It's going to take me a moment to read through this. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can just focus on the, oh my, it looks super dark in here now. Should I turn on the light? You think so? Oh, really? Uh-huh. Okay. I was in my Zen. Thank you, Clarence. The master has said I was in my Zen mood. Well, I don't know if you knew, but I lost my way on some of those slides, so humor was the only way we were going to make it through. Anyway. Mhm. Oh, okay. Oh my God. Yeah. Let me see. Um, can do a couple things here. That's a ring light in the background here. Okay. Is that better? Okay. Okay. What are my questions going to be though? That's the hard thing. Okay. So I'm just going to talk about. Okay. So one of the questions is about Social Security and whether, as an ex, you really can claim or if that's difficult. I would say that it's not that difficult if you were married for over 10 years and you have your information. Um, I recommend to people who are going through divorce that they keep their marriage certificate and their divorce decree, keep that on file, whether it's in paper or electronic format, because they may need it later on. And it is wise, again, if you go through these things, to also keep their, which you would have on joint tax returns and so on, the social security number, so on. Obviously, not to do anything nefarious with, but just because that's helpful if you go to the Social Security Administration to to inquire about what that would be. And again, it may not be what you want to do. You may say, oh, this number is so low that it's really not the best thing for me. But it could be. So a big part of that, again, being organized, having your information. But let's say you don't. There are ways to get the information in a legal and normal way, and those are things we can talk about and talk through. But it boils down to being organized and getting, knowing your numbers. Okay. So that's one thing to keep in mind. There's another question here about um, life in retirement and about figuring out housing and incapacitation and things like that. So that's a lot. So what I will say is the best time to start planning is when you're healthy. Okay, or when you're healthier than you're going to be, because some of you have health conditions that we know that you're facing. Could be something as minor as slightly elevated blood pressure. It could be something more significant like kidney disease, etc. The important thing to do is to have a talk with yourself, figure out what you want, and talk to your family. Look at places, or talk to your family if you're going to be moving in with a relative or even a friend. I mean, I heard a story recently of a friend who moved in with a friend to help through her end stages. I just thought it was a beautiful, beautiful story. I hope I would be that good of a friend. But have those conversations about what you want to happen if you become incapacitated. Do you want to stay in your home? Do you have a long-term care policy that would help with paying for those things? Let them know. Your power of attorney, the people in your life should know if you have the income to live comfortably and get the kind of care you would want. What are some of the places you want to go to if you're incapacitated and need care? Is it, there are places around here, whether it's Riderwood or, other places like that. Is that what you want? Or do you want to go to Asbury Methodist Village, or just a wide variety of different things? Think about not only your capabilities now, but your capabilities 5 or 10 years from now. Is this the time when you want to look at moving, downsizing, right sizing, or aging in place, which may mean making accommodations to your home? So, great question. There's a ton there. In the upcoming months, I'm going to have a webinar where we're focused on housing and mortgage issues, and we'll have some professionals who that's their area, their field that they spend all their time with, and they've been helpful to me as I help my clients, especially my multi-generational clients, where we're dealing with different types of housing issues on different levels. But there's so much there, including one thing I didn't say, which is estate planning, that power of attorney. Who is going to make decisions? I have literally been in the position of informing the power of attorney that, they need to get involved because we're concerned, and they can take it from there. So there are things that can be done and put in place, and trusted contacts and just different things like that. Okay, it looks like we've got one more. We're coming up on our time here. And so this one is just asking about, like, is investing really different for women versus men? So yes and no. No, if we're talking about pink and blue mutual funds. As somebody I greatly respect once said, there's no such thing as pink and blue mutual funds. And he was right. He still is. That being said, we talked about some of the things that make a difference. Time frame is an important factor in the amount of risk you may want to take. Okay, the amount of money that you need also matters. So think about it. If you're going to live longer, you're going to need more. And if you want to keep up with inflation, then there's a certain level of risk, keep up with inflation or surpass it, certain level of risk you may need to take. So some of these things disproportionately affect women. And I would say, let's not generalize. Let's talk about your situation, as opposed to saying all women's situations. We also know that when you look at women being 86% of women having been mothers and parenting, women are more likely to take time out of the workforce to care for children and then take time out of the workforce to care for elderly relatives. I know some of you who have done both, and sometimes done both multiple times. In other words, multiple relatives. It was like one after the other after the other. So these are some things that I would say they have financial consequences. And so it may mean that we need to invest differently. And sometimes it means that I'm mean Michelle, as some of my favorite clients once called me, because we were talking about longevity. And we were talking about you need to save more because you have multiple people in your family who have lived to multiple ancestors, I guess you would say, who've lived to 100. And so that means saving more. And that means possibly working a little bit longer. In their case, they did not have to work longer, but they did save more. They followed my advice and it really made a difference. I give them full kudos for following the hard advice, if you will. But again, that disproportionately affects women. So we had to look at, risk levels and all kinds of things. So, okay, folks. So as we wind down, I know that there are more people who probably have questions. And so what I'm going to say to you is feel free to reach out. Really, we are here to help and happy to offer a free initial consultation to talk about your goals and your situation. For those of you who are my clients, I'm happy to talk to you. Something was stirred in this conversation that maybe we haven't talked about for some reason, some aspect of something. I'm here. We can have a conversation to see how and when it's appropriate for us to do something, or if it's just informational. That's what I'm here for, to help you. As my mission is financial guidance for every stage of life. And that does mean a lot of ongoing conversations as we move through the various stages of life. So thank you. The QR code is there for those of you who may be interested. And there also will be a survey that I really invite you to let us know what you thought, as well as what you'd like to hear about. Because as you know, for this 25th year of financial advising, or after hitting the 25-year mark, I should say, I'm doing one webinar a month. And I want to hear from you what you want to hear from me and from the professionals who I collaborate with. So please let us know. And thanks again. It is my pleasure to have been here to talk to you today. Take care.